You clicked on this video for a reason. How does a 24 billion island end up completely empty? The answer is wilder than you think. To understand Ocean Flower Island, you have to understand the man who built it. His name is Xu Jiayin, and in 2017, he was the richest man in all of Asia. He didn't come from money. He grew up poor in rural China, raised by his grandmother after his mother died when he was just 8 months old. But Xu had a talent for spotting opportunities, and in China's exploding real estate market of the 2000s, he built an empire. His company, Evergrande Group, grew into the second largest property developer in China. They were building apartments faster than almost anyone else on Earth, and Xu was getting richer by the day. Then, in 2011, he went on vacation to Singapore. According to Evergrande's own official account, Xu sat alone in his hotel room one evening and had a vision. He would build an artificial island in the shape of a bougainvillea flower off the coast of Hainan, China's tropical southern island. The project would be his masterpiece, his legacy, his version of the Palm Jumeirah, only bigger. He sketched it all out himself, the company says. Every detail. And when he returned to China, he put the full force of Evergrande behind making it real. In 2012, construction began. They started dredging sand from the ocean floor to build 3 connected artificial islands in Yangpu Bay. The total area would be 800 hectares, 1.5 times the size of Dubai's iconic Palm Jumeirah. Engineers moved tens of millions of cubic meters of sand and rock. The scale was staggering. By 2015, when sales officially launched, buyers lined up. On the very first day of sales alone, Evergrande collected 12.2 billion yuan, roughly 1.7 billion, in a single day. One apartment was reportedly sold every 3.2 seconds. The dream was alive, and the money was flooding in. Here's the scale of what Xu Jiayin was trying to pull off. Ocean Flower Island wasn't just a housing development. It was designed to be an entirely new city built from nothing in the middle of the sea. The plans called for over 60,000 apartments to eventually house up to 200,000 people. That's the population of a mid-sized European city, on an island that didn't exist 10 years earlier. And the apartments were just the beginning. There would be a massive castle-style hotel with 5,000 rooms, one of the largest in the world, a Hilton, a convention center big enough to host international summits, a theme park, a film and television studio, a fairy tale world for children, an opera house, a wedding venue shaped like a giant orchid, hot springs, shopping malls, botanical gardens. The original budget announced 160 billion yuan, roughly 24 billion. But here's the first sign. Something was already wrong. To complete this vision, Evergrande actually needed every single one of those 24 billion. By the time the company collapsed, they had only managed to spend around 13 billion. They ran out of money and out of time halfway through their own dream. The theme parks, half built. The film studio, abandoned. The fairy tale world, still waiting for its fairy tale. By 2020, what had been built was mostly finished. The islands were real, the buildings stood, and on January 1st, 2021, Ocean Flower Island officially opened to the public. Evergrande threw a massive celebration. Over 5 million tourists visited in that first year. The light shows every evening were spectacular. The hotels filled up. For one brief moment, it looked like the bet had paid off. But behind the scenes, something had already gone terribly wrong. Let's go back to 2017, while Ocean Flower Island was still being built. That year, China's Ministry of Ecology and Environment launched an investigation. Their finding was damning. The construction of these islands was destroying coral reefs and killing oyster populations in Yangpu Bay. And the way the project had been approved? It violated Hainan province's environmental protection laws. Here's how they got away with it, at least for a while. The local government had a trick. Instead of approving the entire massive project at once, which would have triggered strict national environmental reviews, they chopped it into dozens of smaller parcels. Each piece was small enough to fall under lower environmental standards. In other words, they gamed the system. And who approved this scheme? A man named Jiang Qi, the former mayor and Communist Party chief of Danzhou, the city where the island was being built. In 2020, Jiang Qi was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison for corruption, but Ocean Flower Island kept going. Then, in December 2021, the story took an even darker turn. The Danzhou government, the same government that had approved the island in the first place, suddenly issued an extraordinary order. 39 of Evergrande's buildings had to be demolished within 10 days. The reason? The building permits had been illegally obtained. Evergrande pushed back. Buyers who had paid for apartments panicked. By April 2022, the demolition order was reversed. The 39 towers were seized by authorities instead, who promised to convert them into rental housing and commercial spaces. But by then, the real crisis had already started. In 2021, Beijing tightened lending rules for property developers. Credit dried up almost overnight. Evergrande, which had borrowed and borrowed to fund its explosive growth, suddenly couldn't pay its bills. The debts were staggering, over $300 billion. $300 billion. That's more than the entire GDP of countries like Pakistan or Chile. On the 29th of January 2024, a Hong Kong court issued a liquidation order against Evergrande. The company that built this island paradise was officially bankrupt, and Xu Jiayin, once the richest man in Asia, was in prison, accused of inflating company revenues by nearly $80 billion. So, what does Ocean Flower Island look like today? Journalists who visited recently paint a haunting picture. The theme park is running barely. Staff members stand in empty shops and look genuinely surprised when a customer walks in. The orchid-shaped wedding venue is covered in a thick layer of dust. The movie studio sits dormant, like a film set abandoned mid-production. The fairy tale world zone remains unfinished cranes, frozen in place like sculptures. A recent typhoon caused damage in northern Hainan, but visitors say it was hard to tell what the storm had broken and what was simply never finished to begin with. And then there are the 39 towers. These high-rise apartment blocks, nearly finished when Evergrande collapsed, stand empty on a wasteland of rubble and waterlogged foundations. Some of the concrete pits, meant to become underground parking garages, have filled with rainwater. Local residents use them as fishing holes, but the most alarming discovery came in 2024. Residents who had actually moved into completed buildings started reporting terrifying problems: cracked basement columns, crumbling cement, severely corroded steel reinforcements inside the walls. Investigators suspect the cause. Builders had secretly used sea sand in the concrete. Here's why that matters. Sea sand is full of salt, and salt eats through steel like acid slowly, invisibly, from the inside. Buildings made with sea sand look fine for years. Then they start to fall apart. 60,000 families had bought apartments in this development. Many of them still live there. Ocean Flower Island didn't fail because of bad luck. It failed because it was built on a lie. Actually, several lies stacked on top of each other. The lie that borrowed money could grow forever. The lie that corruption could be papered over with fines. The lie that you could build a city of 200,000 people in the middle of the ocean and simply will it into existence. And Ocean Flower Island is not alone. Across China right now, economists estimate there are roughly 20 million pre-sold apartments that have never been delivered. Home prices in major Chinese cities have dropped 25 to 30% since their peak. New home sales have fallen to their lowest level in over 15 years. China's real estate sector, which once accounted for around 25% of the entire economy, according to IMF economists, is in the middle of a slow-motion collapse that experts say could take a decade to unwind. And Hainan has been here before. In 1993, the island experienced China's first modern property crisis, a construction frenzy that ended with 95% of developers in the capital going bankrupt after Beijing raised interest rates. History, it seems, has a habit of repeating itself. Here's what's strange about Ocean Flower Island today. The Danzhou government hasn't given up on it. They're still marketing it to tourists, still calling it a unique lifestyle concept, still trying to persuade buyers to invest in the apartments that haven't been seized or abandoned. And some people are listening. A small, unusual population has quietly settled on the island, mostly retirees and pensioners, drawn by cheap apartments and ocean breezes. They get their hair cut on the street. They fish in the flooded foundations. They live in the shell of a city that was never quite born. Is Ocean Flower Island a cautionary tale? A symbol of China's real estate crisis? A monument to one man's impossible ambition? Or could it somehow, against all odds, actually become what it was meant to be? Because here's the thing nobody is talking about yet. China isn't the only country building ghost cities right now. There are several others in the Middle East, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, all following the same playbook. Build it, and they will come. Will they? That's a story we'll be covering very soon. So if you don't want to miss it, you know what to do. China isn't the only country betting everything on a mega project right now. India is building its very first bullet train, a 17 billion high-speed rail that engineers said couldn't be done. And the government just made it official. It launches on August 2027. Because when you spend 17 billion, you want the whole world watching. Will it deliver? Or will it become the next ghost city just at 300 kilometers per hour? That story is on your screen right now.